My first hearing of the competition was when it was presented as a workshop here in the office. We do encourage a collaborative atmosphere in the office. So it was tabled as an opportunity for the team to engage and see what the competition team is busy working on. And then immediately I felt we should jump on board and be part of the great initiative.
Amazing.
I think we have different disciplines in our office. So we have landscape, we have architecture, we have urban design. And when we looked at this project, we initially thought an urban design team, we should put forward an urban design team, because with urban design, you look at things at a macro scale and you see how one building or one site can influence a public realm. So initially we went in with a urban design team, and then we quickly realized that we actually needed inputs from different disciplines, and that's when Thuthuka came in. He has a way of understanding people's needs, and I think architects have a better understanding of that, of being able to look at a client and understand what are their needs and put that into a design. So our team was, I've mainly worked in urban design, but Lena is very experienced in urban design and architecture, and we've been able to come together and put all of our knowledge together, and I think that's helped the project as well, and the design. Yeah.
Is a vertical community or a vertical neighborhood, essentially. And we didn't necessarily pinpoint a site immediately because it didn't really matter what site it was. It was the fact that it's in the city center. That's what's prime. It's about access to the city. And it's about designing something that can mold to any site and can even be built on top of existing structures. But I mean, a great clean slate is perfect. It's the best way forward. The second kind of element to that was making something that encouraged the outdoors, the open spaces, the greenery, views towards the mountain, bringing in what the city, I guess, lacks in very many ways. It doesn't have space. And bringing that element in meant that we could create a space that is desirable beyond, say you do have small units, and that's what happens when you design in cities. You've got to go micro, you've got to go smaller to accommodate density. However, if you bring in that outside space, you bring it indoors, and you bring it into the design and the structure, you can bring back that quality of life and space. So that was a big element in the design. So it's multi-tiered, has these big open spaces and rooftop gardens, all facing towards the mountain, bringing in that landscape. And then another element to it was it not being a block form, but rather broken up into parts. So it felt like there were smaller courtyard spaces and groupings of buildings for fostering community and connection and interaction. And then another big element, and perhaps this is more conceptual, was making sure that there were no large divides or walls between things. So you have almost a flow from main road, where you would have your commercial and retail entities and your liveliness, bringing that street and that energy into the building, through the building, into slightly smaller, more private spaces. So again, that kind of threshold is very important.
I think realistically, if we want to see inclusionary housing in the city, you do think micro units in order to make it work. But with our concept, we try to explore shared spaces and how do we create a neighborhood or community feel. And that's how we tackled this issue about creating micro units, because in the city, micro units can only really serve a young professional or a student, but realistically the people that actually need that housing is bigger families. So essentially you can't create micro units for emerging families. It's not going to service them. So what we came up with was a shared space concept. So even though the units may be smaller, but we're creating different units that cater to different people. So maybe it's a single mother and a student living together, but they have a shared space. So we also create that opportunity for people to lean on one another. And I think that was one way that we tackled it, and also the different communal spaces that we had in between those semi-private spaces. And yeah, I think that's how we tackled it.
So I think it all starts with the people who are raising the issues of not in my backyard. They are now in positions where they can say not in my backyard, as they speak from a place better than where some who still like to get there would not necessarily say such. But yeah, essentially, as the people who are in need for such spaces, that was our point of departure. Maybe a quick example of background, I'm originally from Kandla, which is in KZN. My journey through architecture has found me here in the Cape, where I've been for the past 11 years. I arrived with a backpack and a laptop. So as I think our narrative mentioned, it starts with arrival, with aspirations for permanence. So we all arrive with aspirations for a more permanent home. So essentially, that's where our point of departure was. Each person was, or archetype was identified. What exists around us? What are the challenges? What are the constraints? A lot of which was actually informed by the resource material in the brief, as all the research has been done before we even got there. So our approach was to respond to the existing conditions outside, and the lived realities and the lived experiences of each and every one of us, where we do need to break those boundaries. I think one of the challenges with the inclusionary housing is that there's a divide. Even though we say we would like to create, or what is being created is a vertical city elsewhere, there's always a divide of sort between people, or group A and group B, that separates. So our approach was to break that division, have that, I think what my colleague mentioned it as leaning on each other and depending on each other. So our approach was working with what currently exists and responding to those challenges and constraints as a response. So my maybe answer to that is, but everywhere at the same time. It might not necessarily hit the question spot on, but the lived realities or our lived experiences informed our response to that, and how it should be shaped going forward is that we are all people, we all have aspirations. The segregation or the separations need to be dismantled, essentially. Thank you.
How we came about, well, how we addressed the brief and the competition was, we first defined what is home and who would be the people inhabiting that home. And from the research, we found that the people that are most in need of housing and that opportunity in the city is people with families. So we realized quite quickly that we weren't going to create very small units. We needed to create spaces that were going to service families. So that came out of the research. So we realized that it was going to be emerging families and bigger families, more 3-bedroom plus, not 2-bedroom and 1-bedrooms, which I guess developers push to get the numbers up. But yeah, and you know.
I don't know if I have a direct answer to that question, but I do think the material that's there very strongly influences what we've got, because it's not only, there were some studies, there were also analyses of the sizes of, say, social housing units and what's required there, transitionary units and what's been done before, say like Pickwick site, and then your standard studio, 1-bed, 2-bed, 3-bed, and then what developers are producing, which are these micro units. So I think it's taking what was great with reading through that resource material was going, this is what's there. Everything's been studied thoroughly and examined. How can we create something that just alters that slightly? And at the very core of it, it is sharing. I think that is the only way forward with something like that. Like this is to create those shared spaces. So whether it's sharing facilities, bathrooms, kitchens, or whether it's sharing communal spaces, laundry, washing areas, whatever you're sharing means we can take that cost away and that space away from the individual unit and give more people that opportunity to even be there, to even have access. And added to that element, there's also very little flexibility. A lot of these units don't incorporate growth. People expand, or their parents get too old and they need to live together. They need to support one another. Multiple single parent households would actually benefit from the support of other single parent households. So grouping those kinds of people together creates a support structure in itself. I think a big element that's lacking in a lot of these designs is the human aspect that we're capable of adding to those designs, which is that cooperation or that element of together we can do things. And I think that is where a huge inspiration for this project didn't only come from the resource material, but also a lot of the resource and research that was done on Sissy Gool House, and how successful that has been in achieving organized structures, community structures and management systems that can take you beyond just a house or a little space in the city to a home and homemaking and a support structure.
The government, as mentioned in the resource materials, the government has an obligation to foster and encourage inclusionary housing. So I believe it might be the lack from the government to fund such projects in a meaningful way, not simply, I don't want to drag BNG housing into this, but not simply just cookie cutter homes, but the government's approach to it is not where it should be. So it is a choice. I think it is through choice that they approach the funding methods, or maybe not putting measures in place to compel developers, compel the professional industries to actually be directly and full-on involved in the inclusionary housing. So I will move it slightly towards the government as the people who set the tone, and if the tone is wrong from the top, then all the way down it will be wrong. So developers do not feel compelled to actually respond to the inclusionary housing requirements. As a developer, maybe the safety nets from them would be incentives. I'm no expert in this, so I'm not going to try and maybe say what would work for them. But if it made sense as a business for them to actually go in and address the issues, the systemic issues which exist from our past, if to them it made, what's it called? I think the term is called, is it a corporate citizen? People who want to actually make a meaningful change in the state. So I do believe if there was something that made business sense for them, then it would open up the platform for developers to actually be fully involved. But it does start at the top. If the tone is incorrect at the top, then at the bottom it will be chaos.
If I can add, if we as people in the built environment, architects, engineers, could work on a model like this and make it financially feasible and attractive to developers, that might be an angle or a way in which we can contribute as an industry, making it something that is more attractive. Of course, we also need the government, the city, to take their part. We would need the land, for example, to be released. Land is one of the most expensive parts in that transaction. And if we had the land, you have the model that works, you look at sustainable materials, you look at incremental design and building, and you look at creating an industry around that building that supports it, perhaps even the material industry. So if we can create all the structures to support it and come up with a financial model that suits, say, a private developer or some kind of private funding, I do think there is a way in through that door to making it a reality.
I think what's nice about our project is that we cater to different levels, to different income groups. We describe it as a ladder of living. So what's nice about it is that it caters to different groups. So me if I go back to study, a student, I can live there, but even a few years down the line, and have children and I'm married, I can also live there. There's different tiers to it, and it creates a community and a sense of belonging because you can work your way in the model. You don't have to leave or feel like any type of displacement, and every time you enter a new chapter of your life you have to move to a different area. What's nice is you can almost, as you grow, you can grow with the building, which is nice. And then you still have that community, you still have that support system, and those connections that you fostered in the beginning is going to stay with you forever. So where would I stay in the building? Luckily, it's so integrated that it can be anywhere in the building. There's not one space, because what's nice about the concept is it's all integrated. It's all nothing separate. You don't have the students living in one area. My neighbor can be a student, or it can be an emerging family. It can be a person that's just a migrant worker that's maybe just trying to find their footing in Cape Town. And that's what's nice, because opportunity is there for everybody.
Can I jump in again and just say one more thing, if that's okay? I think we didn't only want to cater for... The goal of this was not just to create something that creates an opportunity for people to live there, it's also to make it attractive. And I think a huge part there was looking at what have we experienced over the last 6 years. We went through COVID, and globally I think we also all underwent a bit of depression, loneliness, isolation, and especially if you came to, and it's a very similar feeling to what a lot of migrant workers and people who come here to find work on their own or go to university. Opportunities, are very rife in Cape Town, and that loneliness and actually being able to target that as something that we want to improve through our design and through our architecture as well, I think is a draw for not only people who need the affordable housing, but also people who want to come to Cape Town and experience living in a community. I think it's a very big draw, something we don't talk about enough. We are very isolated individuals, and I think even in a market unit, someone from overseas who can afford it, and therefore the cross-subsidization model would work beautifully, is opting for a life where they do share things. They're forcing themselves to share things, but it's actually better for their mental health. So I think we wanted to try and reach all of those different areas and not just meet the numbers. There, in no means do we think this design is not going to have faults and might crumble and not work in however many years. I think it's about testing those scenarios and seeing whether something like this can hold. And in a lot of the cases with buildings, it's about maintenance and upkeep, and something still feeling relevant and useful. So I think if built into the model you have that self-organized structure where people are looking after their own place, they're proud, they've taken ownership, they're making sure it's kept. That's one element. Another element is making sure that whatever materials we use have a longer life. But I think the main thing is to create a prototype, to create something that can inspire and show its faults so that improvements can be made for the second time round, the third time round.
I think that... So, with this project, I don't see that if it stays as a parking lot, it's going to unlock opportunities for people. If you can create a integrated housing model that can bring people that's already coming to the city, closer to the city, in the city, you're unlocking so much opportunities for people. opportunities that wouldn't be there if a person traveling from a rural township just outside of Cape Town, time is, you lose a lot of opportunity if that travel time. So I think it unlocks multiple opportunities for people. Maybe we'll see less traffic as well. And yeah, I just think opportunity. There's going to be so much opportunity unlocked if you develop those lands for different income groups, from different types of people, from different types of backgrounds.
I think leaving the sites as parking lots will mean we or our generation is or are accomplices to a crime of further reinforcing or entrenching the injustices of the past. It means we are maintaining the status quo and maintaining those segregatory policies and planning if we leave it as parking lots. Developing it into these amazing proposals coming out of the competition would mean that the people of this city will be living in the city that they work in. Therefore, it will be a city that is working for us as a people. So as someone coming from outside who found permanence here, I do believe that it cannot be left, the land cannot be left to serve vehicles when there are people to be served and when there is a lot of work to be done to undo the segregatory regulations and the segregatory planning and all sorts. So it cannot be left as parking lots. The space is for people. There are people. We are the people.